Hello and bonjour, and welcome to the extreme north of France and the Channel port city of Boulogne-sur-Mer, whose main claims to fame are a beautifully well-preserved historic centre surrounded by 800-year-old fortifications, and it's also France's leading fishing port, apparently, in terms of sheer volume of fish. And of course, we're not here to see... I don't even need to finish this sentence, do I?
Right. Let me just stand in this patch of brambles. This is France. But that, over there, is England. You can just about see, the white cliffs of Dover glinting in the setting sun. But more importantly, right behind me, is the place you used to be able to get a giant hovercraft to go from here to there. So I reckon we should go and explore that.
This is the disused hoverport of Boulogne-sur-Mer. And in the same way that an airport is built for aircraft, or a heliport is built for helicraft, this was built for hovercraft. In fact, it was one of 4 hoverports built in the late 1960s to accommodate the legendary SRN-4s. You might have seen these before somewhere. They were the largest passenger hovercraft ever constructed. And between the 1960s and the 1990s, they could get you and your vehicle across the channel at more than twice the speed the ferries do it today. You could almost call them the Concorde of the seas. Problem was, they also burnt about as much fuel as Concorde, which meant that after the Channel Tunnel opened in 1994, they could no longer really compete economically. So, long story short, out of the 4 old cross-channel hoverports, there is now only one left where the buildings are still standing.
And on first impressions, that might not be true for much longer. So I'm going to give you a quick tour while it's still here.
The big structure here is the old passenger terminal. And although I said the hoverport opened in the late 1960s, this is actually from the late 1970s. It replaced the original terminal, which was much smaller. And it's a little difficult to imagine now, but back in the day, this frontage would have been made out of glass, rather than all bricked up with concrete. And these are the departure gates. So this is where you would have come out onto the tarmac to catch your hovercraft. What used to be tarmac anyway, now mostly covered in sand. On the few bits of tarmac that are not yet covered in sand, you can still see the markings that were painted out all those years ago in order to guide the hovercraft pilots. There's also this big letter H in a circle, and I've seen some people saying that this was the hovercraft landing pad. But in every photo I've seen, the hovercraft are parked much closer to the terminal. So I think this must have been for helicopters. I could be wrong. Anyway, back to the terminal. There's a big red sign here saying access forbidden to the public. So I'm not going to actually go inside, but I can poke my camera inside and show you what used to be the old departure hall, which is now very reverby. And as I make my way around the old terminal, I did find a few more doors and windows to poke my camera through. For example, here is a lovely view of what I'm guessing was maybe a back office or a storage room or something.
Meanwhile, on this side of the building was the entrance, or one of the entrances anyway. And that would have led you through to everything before the departure hall. So the check-in desks, ticket offices, passport control, duty-free shop, everything you would expect to find in a hoverport terminal. And again, this frontage would have been glass at the time. It's now a car park.
Yes, what used to be the old entrance hall and passenger concourse area is currently in use as a car park. Which sort of begs the question, who exactly is using a car park at an abandoned hoverport? Well, it turns out This abandoned hoverport is not quite as abandoned as I thought it was. The old office block next to the terminal, which used to be home to the Hoverports admin staff, is still in use as offices, and I was told it's now home to some of the admin staff for the fishing port. Add to that all the walkers and dog walkers who come down here to enjoy what is, after all, their local beach, and there's enough people around for someone to have opened a pop-up hoverport food court, where they serve sandwiches and hot and cold drinks. In fact, I can personally recommend this as a great place to enjoy a cheeky hot chocolate while also enjoying these photographs of the hoverport back in the glory days. The thing is, the hoverport doesn't just represent the glory days of the SRN4s. It also represents the glory days of Boulogne as a busy cross-channel ferry port. Like I said, it's still a very active fishing port, but over the last few decades, nearly all of the passenger and freight traffic that used to come through here has been lost to the ever-expanding port of Calais, just up the coast. Which probably explains why the old hoverport in Calais got demolished and redeveloped, and why the hoverport here is, still here.
Anyway, there is one more thing we need to go and see. Because there is one thing this hoverport had that none of the others did, and that is a connecting railway station. So I don't know why I'm still here.
I think we all know by now, you can't put an abandoned railway station within a few hundred metres of me without... Wait, is that Geoff Marshall?
Wait, Tim. Last time we met up at La Haquinière, what was it called?
La Haquinière, very
Haquinière.
well remembered.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You took me on an abandoned line, and now you've brought me to another abandoned station.
Yeah, weird.
At an abandoned hoverport. I'm only going to come to France for abandoned things now. That's it.
Good.
That's the new rule.
I mean, that's what I had planned anyway. That over there, Geoff, is an old railway signal.
You can see where the aspects. Oh, there's tracks. Oh, we're on the platform. I just realised. Sorry, that took me far too long to realise. Oh, sorry. And welcome to. What was it called?
Boulogne Port.
That. Welcome
I
to
think.
abandon that. Yeah. Nice.
Would you like to go and see the signal?
And the tunnel. There's a tunnel.
Well,
Can you tell me there's a tunnel?
Yeah. Looks like you can just walk in. And it just carries on, right? I'm not sure I want to walk all the way through to the other end. It's going to start getting far too dark to film it anyway. We're probably going to go back this way. To be clear, everyone, this railway has not been used for 20 years. Yeah, so this is where trains would have come into the station from Paris, I think. And then you would wander over to the hoverport and get your hovercraft.
And while we're here, would anyone like to know why France built this station when there wasn't one at the British end? Well, in a classic British rail move, they were supposed to build one at Dover Hoverport too, but it got delayed and then cancelled, and eventually they replaced it with a bus, which took you to the nearest other station more than a kilometre away. In the end, Boulogne was the only hoverport that ever got a direct rail link, and when the hoverport closed here in 1991, that was the end of the station too. And that's pretty much the end of the story of the Boulogne hoverport. If you'd like to know more about the giant hovercraft themselves, I can highly recommend this video, which takes you inside the last surviving SRN4, but I also recommend this one by a channel called Mustard if you want to know more technical details about how hovercraft actually work, and this one by Luke O'Sullivan, which shows how you can still catch a smaller hovercraft today and how the technology has been adapted to make it more viable. I'll put links to all of those in the description. And meanwhile, if you'd like to visit the hoverport, or whatever's left of it by the time you get here, it's roughly a 45-minute walk or a 5-minute taxi ride from the main railway station at Boulogne-Ville, which itself is only a couple of hours from Paris or 1 hour from Lille. So with Valentine's Day coming up in just a few weeks, why not cancel the expensive restaurant and go to the Hoverport Cafe instead? Anyway, Stay subscribed for more questionable relationship advice. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.